Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us. I am so excited to share with each and every one of you this first in this incredible series, the Transformational Life series. This is a very exciting new program, new opportunity that I have felt very guided to share and to create for and with all of you who are watching and listening. And the point of these is to help to inspire you in your life, in your world, through these incredible conversations that you will be seeing on the website that I have created. Again, the address for that is www.transformationallifeseries.com. And I am so honored and excited to be here with each and every one of you for the first. And I am so happy. Allie Baker, thank you for being with us. Thank you for being a part of this. And everyone, Allie is an incredible person. I am so excited that she is the first for each of you to be watching and listening. And so without further ado, I will introduce you. Allie, thank you. Hello.
Hello, Krista. It's lovely to be here. Hello, everybody. Nice to connect with you in this transformatory way.
Absolutely. Thank you. We're going to start this, everyone, with giving you, Allie, an opportunity to just share a little bit more about what you do with everyone. How about, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit more?
Okay, yeah, that would be good. My name's Ali. I am British and I currently live in the French Alps, high up in the mountains. I work as a holistic intuitive coach. I'm a fully qualified homeopath. I work with individuals and with groups, running different classes, really focusing on finding your voice, finding your inner voice and connecting with the authentic person. And how I do this is with women particularly, it's really connecting with the intuition via the female menstrual cycle. So accessing that creative feminine side of who you are. And generally I run workshops to do with the intuition, vision boards, flower essences, kind of in that broader context of putting people in touch with their spiritual side. So people who are just awakening to the potential of who they are, maybe at a crossroads, going down that path of exploring self-care and being able to say yes and say no, and putting yourself at the center of your life. And how do we do that? Through connecting with that inner guidance, that intuitive voice that we all have, but we often tend to lose and forget along the way. So this is the voice that gives you those little nudges, that speaks to you, and then often the logical, rational voice takes over. And my work is really about refinding that, re-listening to it, and learning to go with it, to not let the logic override. And yeah, I'm a very practical, creative person, so I use lots of tools like meditation, writing, creative movement, dance, lots of things like that. So my work is has kind of evolved over the last few years, very much to being more about the connection with yourself.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much. I love everything you do. That's absolutely fantastic. Everyone, just so you know, watchers and listeners, again, we're sharing with you each speaker's transformational life story. We're going to be covering key moments and the things that have helped to shape each of the speakers' lives and the things that have really helped them in their journeys as well. And so with that in mind, it would be great, Allie, if you would like to share a little bit more about yourself. And as ever with these things, it is fantastic to start from the beginning. So if we think back, if you think back to, your early years, what were sort of the key moments, the key things that shaped you, young or little Allie, from the beginning? What was like life?
Um, well, I guess I have kind of reconnected with that younger version of
Mm,
Ali. I feel more connected to that little girl than I have done for a long time, because I was quite a willful, determined, perceptive child, super
mm,
sensitive, and always asking the question why, which didn't always go down too well with my teacher, single parent, slightly neurotic mother, who did her best to answer all my questions. But when I stamped my foot, that was kind of one thing too much for her. So yeah, I kind of feel more connected to that person now, because she was the one who wanted to write, who lived in a small rural village in northern England. And I loved flowers and I loved making things, and I was really creative in a very kind of practical way, and making potions, which years down the line I can really see is who I am, and as a homeopath and a person who loves anything kind of alternative and healthy, and that was that person. So I feel kind of really in touch with that little girl now. I've kind of reclaimed her, if you can do such a thing, in my 40s. It has been a bit of a journey, because I kind of, like lots of people, got swept along the way in my teens, following others, not listening to myself, uh, trying to work out the way by looking at other people, but always feeling just a little bit different and never quite fitting the mold, because it wasn't my mold, it wasn't my way of doing things. So sometimes things didn't always work out, and I kind of knew that they weren't going to work out because they weren't my inner voice, my heart really speaking to me. And I sort of learned to not listen to my heart, in the sense of, my intuition would say, don't go to that university. But then I got really good grades and I thought, well, I've got to go to that university. And guess what? It didn't work out. And so I had to listen to my intuition again and kind of find the courage to say, okay, this isn't right, and I need to do something different. So it was a real kind of meandering kind of a journey that my childhood took me on. And I guess I've been really fortunate. It didn't always feel like that, but I guess I've been really fortunate in that I've invited lots of different experiences along the way, in terms of countries and jobs and people and experiences, and studying new things and that kind of thing. I will be a lifelong learner, because I love learning new things. And what is at the center of all that are relationships for me. I'm a real people person, and the relationships we have with people, and how they impact us, or how we react to them, what they give us, how we respond, how we kind of integrate with others, is a really key a key way of being for me.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, and thinking of and speaking of key relationships, those fundamental ones that we have from the very beginning, from childhood, who are the people who are taking care of you? Often mom and dad. What was your relationship like with them as a young girl? What was that like?
um well, my parents separated when I was quite young, so
Mm,
it wasn't kind of the most easiest of rides in 1970s rural northern England. But yeah, and again with my mom, it was like, this is gonna. It was a testing relationship. It really was. And I guess by the time I got to my teens, we'd reached some sort of equilibrium as she reached the menopause, which was a big rite of passage, I think, with hindsight in her life. But I think also I had learned how to handle her and how to get by. And that getting by was almost making myself smaller because my voice was too loud, my spirit was too big, and it was just all a bit too much for my mom. So, but again, when you lose a parent, which my mom is no longer alive, you go through a whole process of grief. And now my memories are actually just really good of her because I no longer need to find fault with her or blame her. You know, I can see that the lessons I had to learn with her were all part of my journey, and actually she did the best that she could. So I'm at a place of real acceptance now, my mom, which feels really good. But yeah, when I was younger, particularly as a really small child, really small child, it was really tough, and yeah, not an easy ride at all for two very strong-minded women to kind of find their way with each other. So
absolutely. So maybe a little bit of like knocking of heads every so often.
yeah, I think it was knocking of heads and physical hands and a clash of voices and spirits and yeah, that kind of I think it's I think most people go through that. You know, the mother-daughter relationship is quite complex when we pass from being a child to being a young woman to being a mother. You know, we go through different rites of passage, and they are not always easy, and there are, you know, we don't often celebrate them, and our culture doesn't particularly kind of really facilitate that passing from one to another. But I think we kind of then find our way in a roundabout fashion, and often quite painful ways as well. But these experiences are what we have. You know, they're what we come to this life with, and they're here to be healed. And I feel that I was able to do that with my, particularly with my mom, because we really healed. Yeah, we really healed who we were, and accepted who we were, and allowed that relationship to develop from a place of trauma to a place of positiveness. Yeah.
How fantastic. That's beautiful. And you know, and I love what you shared as well, because as you said, often it can be some of those core relationships, they can be difficult for a lot of people. You know, there can be a lot of things to grow through, to learn from as well. Do you feel that the things you were able to learn from and to grow through with the relationship that you had and that you have with your mom, with your mother, do you feel like that has really helped to shape you and who you are now as a woman, you know, as a mother, perhaps as a wife, as a friend, in your work? Do you feel that has helped to shape you as well? Some of the things that you learned from and were able to take away with you from the relationship you have with your mother?
Yeah, I think for me, Krista, it was a really pivotal point in my life. Was in my mid to late 20s, my mum was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and that just created a whole different scenario of emotions for me to go through, because I took on that responsibility of being her primary carer and looking after her and moving to be nearer her, and and finding it very, very difficult, and feeling the injustice and the unfairness of it all. And but just having to go through that process of living my emotions, really living them before I could let them go, because I just couldn't accept it. You know, it just wasn't right. It wasn't fair. So I had to live the emotions, which I did maybe on the 9-mile journey between her house and my house. I sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. And then I was really fortunate in that I found a support group for people who looked after people with Alzheimer's, and but they were for younger people. So not people kind of in the 60s and 70s and 80s looking after husbands and wives. These were younger people, and there was one person who was in my situation looking after his dad. And I think it was that finally going, when you ask and then receive support, it allows you to open to something else. Because I'd never been shown that as a model or as a way of being or as a way of living. And actually, when I decided to do this, it really gave me an insight that everybody's journey is completely individual, but at the same time, we're all going along the same kind of a path. And to not feel that sense of loneliness, to not feel that sense of difference, which I now celebrate as my uniqueness. But at that point in my life and up to that point, I just wanted to be the same as everybody else. I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be like everybody else. I wanted to do the corporate career and have a house and get married and do it like you should. So when you ask and receive support, you actually just open to a different side of who you are, and that vulnerable, soft side of exposing yourself and not having all the answers, and being okay with that, you know, and just kind of learning from others, having that sense of empathy with others, that sense of community, but really being able to just expose the deep side or the dark side or whatever it is that you're feeling, those emotions that have that intensity to just take over and sometimes floor us, which they have done in my life. They have been so overwhelming that they have literally just brought me to a standstill. And I think that recognition of actually it's about support, that really started my journey in my mid to late 20s of accessing support. And from there on, it's been a really, really fundamental part of my life, has been asking for support, which it wasn't as a person brought up with older parents in a more religious kind of environment. It was you give to others before you give to yourself. And I've really undone that concept and belief now, because I think actually you can't give to others unless you give to yourself first and foremost. You are at the center of your life, and you are responsible for that, and you do what is necessary, even if it's perceived by others as being selfish. If it feels right for you, then it's not selfish. But that's taken a long process of really kind of unpicking that word selfish, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that you've hit upon that. I completely agree. And it's so fascinating to me at times, some of the words that we find ourselves using, because when you really pick them apart, when you look at what do these words actually mean, selfish is such an incredible example of that. You know, because selfish really, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this a bit, selfish, all that means really when you look at it is that you're placing your needs as being a priority, that you're taking care of yourself. Which, you know, on the face of it, that's not a bad thing. And yet for a lot of people, for a lot of the world, that word, it holds such negative connotations.
Mm.
It is really looked down upon. Was beginning to be able to take care of yourself, was that something that felt difficult for you at first?
Um, yes, I think so. I think it's just not
Mm,
in our culture to do that. And
mm,
we're when we see examples of people doing that, then it's often labeled as being, selfish, really bad,
mm,
manipulative, negative, whatever. There's a lot of
mm,
words around that,
mm,
which just seems really funny now to me, kind of 20 years on, because
mm,
your life is about you. You are at the center of your life. You are in charge of your life. You decide, you choose, that it's all about you. That is what it's about. You are here in this lifetime to incarnate you and be the biggest and best version of who you are, not behind anybody else, not in somebody else's shadow. And if
mm,
that's a bit challenging, then we have to find help. We have to ask for support. We have to go deeper, to challenge ourselves, to sometimes get uncomfortable, to sometimes get out of our comfort zone, to to go to that place, to meet who we are and to be who we are, because that's what our world needs right now. It needs people to be who they really, really are. And sometimes that is not easy. And I totally relate to that, because being me has just felt so hard at times. But then I have a choice. I have a choice to do something about that, to change my thoughts, to change my life. And I'm more able to do that now. I didn't feel capable of doing that when I was younger. I kind of gave my power away. And even though I was a powerful, strong-minded woman, I still wasn't living it, inhabiting it, exhibiting it, being it. I was kind of, dilly-dallying, dancing around in the shadows kind of thing. So in my opinion, the universe, the world, gives you situations that makes you step into it, that challenges it. And again, we resist, we push them away, we can't do it, we turn our backs on it, but it just keeps coming round. And I've had lots of situations like that in my life where I remember meeting my husband and just pushing him away and saying, oh God, this is too complicated, this is not right. And he didn't go away, because I knew he was the right person for me. I'd never experienced something like that, but I still tried to push it away and do myself down and miss out on something amazing that I've had with him. Another example is I decided to walk the Camino, and I heard about it a few times. I'd read a few books. I just completely decided that it wasn't possible because of my position in life. I was a mom, I had 2 kids, my husband works away, just not possible. Put it away, just live the experiences through other people, read their books, watch the films, da da da. But it didn't go away, and it just didn't go away, and it was coming back round and hitting me from all directions. And it was the universe's way of trying to say, you've got to go and do this, listen to your heart, follow your dreams, really kind of embody them and be them, and stop shying away from it. And eventually I wrote some words down about my biggest kind of dream for 2013, and the ridiculousness of what I was writing down really struck me. And that was in the January, and by the end of March I had created a website, done some training, done the research, bought the clothes, talked to my employer, sorted everything out, and I was on my way. And I went and I walked, I don't know, 500 miles or whatever it was, ridiculousness, to do it. So it was a really good example of how, when we get nudges or inclinations, we have to follow them. We cannot ignore them, because that is our intuition speaking to us. That is that voice that's saying, come on, this is what you want. Listen, honor yourself. I really like that word now, about honoring myself and respecting myself, because it was something that I seriously did not do.
Absolutely. I love that. It's a very powerful word, and also concept, the idea of honoring yourself, and I find it so interesting as well how, earlier, when you mentioned as well about, because I'm thinking back a little bit when you spoke earlier in our conversation about, all the times when you've needed to be there for others, and it's been about also honoring their needs. So, with your mother and, significant people who were in your life as well. What is it like for you? Because, obviously, I mean, I know that now you're also a mother. So when we have this idea of, and knowing the importance of being able to honor your needs, to take care of yourself, how does that fit in to everything else? How does that, the importance of being able to honor yourself and your needs, how does that fit into everyday life? How do you make it work?
That's not a given. That's not something that we, in my opinion or my experience, that's not something that is just worked through and finished. It's an ongoing journey. And what I've come to realize, Krista, by working with different women, and particularly women, is it's a conversation that is an ongoing one about boundaries. It's having a profound awareness of your boundaries. And we can often feel that boundaries need to change, that they've been overstepped, that they're not in the right place or whatever. But actually being able to do something about that takes, again, the inner voice. It takes listening to the inner voice to find our voice, which often has been submerged, repressed, hidden away. But it takes having that courage to stand up and to redefine, reinforce, and put them in place. And again, this for me has been a really big challenge in my life, in terms of not taking the easy option and just acquiescing and going with everything to suit everybody else, because they are intrinsically related. It comes back to what we said before about the word selfish. We have to really ask ourselves, is this right for me? Yes, it is. Okay, what do I need to do? I need to do X, Y, and Z. Okay, how am I going to do this? And often fear comes in and sabotages us and stops us from being able to pursue those ideas, those new thoughts, those dreams, whatever they are. So we have to learn to work with that and just be continuously aware of these boundaries and put them in place. And most mothers know that when they are not in a good place, then their family isn't in a good place. Their kids aren't in a good place. You just know it. It's energetically, something happens when you are with kids and you're not in a good place yourself. And that's a sign that you haven't given yourself enough downtime, enough connection with yourself, enough self-care, enough attention to your cycle, enough time to dance, enough time to hang out with your friends, whatever it is. It's becoming aware of what you need, what your needs are, and prioritizing them. And sometimes it's really quite as simple as prioritizing them, putting them in your diary, on your calendar, and saying, this is really, really super important. But yeah, it can be a dance. It can be, ooh, how do I do it? How's this going to affect everybody? But we have to learn to do this as women, as people, as mothers, as carers.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. And I completely agree. You know, something I have often thought and also said and shared to others is that, you know, part of how it all happens, and it makes sense, is that the people who are around you, they're watching you. You know, so whether we're talking about the people who are around you, maybe our friends, colleagues, um, you know, certainly children and your immediate family, your loved ones, they watch and they know when you're happy. They know when maybe you're feeling a bit more stressed out. And children are watching and observing, and they're taking away and filing all these things, you know, in their, it's sort of like their back pocket, in their hat. And you know, maybe they won't be at the point, now as they're growing up, to fully realize how all of this is going to be helping them, um, for, you know, for their later struggles, or how to handle stress, or how to find their own happiness. But these are sort of the fundamental things that are really going to be helping to shape them as well. Yeah, yeah. So simply by being yourself and simply modeling how do you handle these different situations, that can absolutely be a huge help to them in their own lives as well. Yeah, yeah. I love that. I love that. Backing or switching gears just slightly, one thing I wanted to ask you about, you know, we've been talking about, you know, the importance of honoring yourself, of knowing what your needs are and making sure that you're taken care of. And we've talked about that, you know, in context of, you know, taking care of people around you and so on. One thing our audience who are watching and listening, they may not know, but I know, is that, you know, you used to live in England. That's where you were born and brought up, but you now live in France, which is a very different environment in a lot of ways. I'm really curious about how you've been able to honor yourself, you know, in this move, but also because something else you touched upon that I would love to explore a little bit, if you don't mind. You mentioned the idea of finding your voice as well and speaking your truth. So I would love to hear a little bit, if you'd like, about how has that been able to be, something that you have found moving from, you know, a country where you obviously knew the language, the customs, the culture, and to where you are now.
Yeah, I was really fortunate that we manifested a move to France, and I can put my hand on my heart and say it hasn't always felt like that. But I knew that it was the right thing to do. It was one of those moments where I just knew it was the right thing to do. And I think for me, it's been a real process of unearthing and uncovering parts of who I am. And again, I think I needed to have quite an extreme, challenging situation, like moving to France, armed with only schoolgirl French, and finding myself halfway up a mountain, with not more than a few words. And how was I going to communicate with people? But so it was an opportunity for me to really kind of tap into other ways of being and ways of communicating, and primarily my intuition, which has always been super strong since I was a child, but again, kind of got a bit lost along the way. And then when you get to a place and you can't speak the language and you can't communicate with people, you have to find other ways of doing that. And I used my intuition primarily, and I strengthened it by being in beautiful natural surroundings, by asking for support, by doing lots of different things. I had time to explore my creativity, which was really good for me because I've I've always been a creative person, but never particularly identified with that term or the idea that we're all artists. And particularly as women, we have creative organs that have a purpose for procreation, but they also serve other purposes in terms of being that creative being, you know? So I had opportunities, and I found a dance class, which has been one of my passions from childhood. But again, it kind of got lost. So I was able to reconnect with that. So as some doors close, like the whole knowing where you are, understanding the language, having a big social circle, that kind of thing, other doors open. And it's being able to see that. So that took a bit of adjustment for me. But I really truly believe it was necessary for me to be here. It was necessary for me to come here, and I'm quite interested in that question of why people move to different countries. You know, I just sometimes think there is other reasons why you have to do it, and it could be simply getting out of your comfort zone, learning a new skill, challenging yourself, whatever it is. But I do think there is a bigger question to do with, it's sometimes necessary to do that, to get out of your own way, to explore new possibilities. And that's been my experience, that I've been able to transform myself in a quite a caterpillar to butterfly sort of extreme way, which I'm not going to deny has not been very comfortable at times. But you know, I'm still surviving, and I'm still living and enjoying life, and yeah, accepting who I am, the ups, the downs. It's that process of living that different places, different people can bring you into relationship with.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. That is such a beautiful image as well, the butterfly transforming. And I was share this really briefly. When I was 19, I got my first tattoo, and I got a butterfly. And I've always loved butterflies, so I love that you use that image as well. And there's something really you can almost touch it. That image, you know, it's something that I think a lot of people can relate to. You know, the you know, caterpillar and its chrysalis, and then transforming into this beautiful butterfly flying around. How I'd love to, you know, going on that, how do you feel like you have become a butterfly? When you think about your life, how have you flown?
Oh, I think, yeah, I was once called a butterfly in a very negative way, and actually
Oh.
now I see it as a really beautiful way to live life, in terms of
Mm.
dancing our way through life, taking the opportunities as they present themselves, and changing and evolving. I heard something yesterday
Mm.
about resisting having a career, and it
Mm.
resonated with me, because I don't think we're here just to do one thing. I think we evolve, we adapt, we go with what our heart's saying, and it's finding that courage to be able to do that, and
Mm.
honoring ourselves to do that, and changing direction. It's really,
Mm.
sometimes we need people who have done it before us, like your series of speakers, people who have transformed their lives. It shows that it's possible. It gives permission to other people, and it allows you to take that first step. I love, if you watch a butterfly in a garden, it's a beautiful experience, how they move from one plant to the next, and then they come back to that one. You know, it's not always kind of a linear route that they take. We dance, we oscillate, we go up, we go down, we do whatever. You know, life is not just linear, and it's not just kind of free flowing. It's it moves. It's kind of going with that energy, and it's accepting that how it is. So it's accepting that things aren't going so well. Okay, that's how it is. What do I need to change? What do I need to do? How do I need to be? Do I need to take some time for myself? It's really kind of, it's a beautiful, beautiful metaphor, is living like a butterfly. And It totally encapsulates my life.
I love that. I love that. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. One thing I would love to sort of tie up this portion of it with before we move on, and I would love for the audience to hear a bit more about how they can connect with you and, and find out more about you as well, which we'll do in a little bit. But before that, I would love to know, when you think about your life and your life journey thus far, knowing, it's continuing, it's not like, this is certainly not the end at all. When you think about your life journey so far, what are some of the things, and maybe one or two, whatever comes to you, what are some of the things that you would really love for people to have known about Allie, about who Allie is as a person? And maybe these are some of the things that you would also love, for instance, for your children to know about you. What would you like for your legacy to be? That's another way to look at the question.
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting question, that, Krista. I think I do live to a large extent as I am. I always find it really difficult when you have to, I'm not separate between my working life and my real life. There isn't a big difference. I don't have it's not possible for me to be one thing in one capacity and another thing in another, So, yeah, I think if I had to, maybe in the context, if this is what I'm understanding from the question, is if I had to give myself a bit more of a piece of advice to my younger self, it would be to be a bit more courageous and to be more committed to something, to listen to my intuition and follow through on it, to not let fear take over, because fear has been a really big part of my life, which lots of people who know me will say, no, you're always doing loads of things and you're really courageous. But actually, fear has such a sabotaging capacity on us. It kills ideas, it quashes inspiration, and it keeps us small. So that bigness that I had as a child, I think I could have kind of just kept a bit more light on that, but I don't know, in terms of kind of speaking to my kids, what legacy? No, I'm kind of living how I am. There isn't anything that I'm not really doing. Does that kind of answer your question? I'm not sure it does really, but
I think that's a great way to look at it, and I love that, and I love that to be sort of one of the final messages, that sometimes all that's important is just living your life, and allowing yourself the space and the maybe the patience, but the opportunity to do that, and knowing that however you're living your life, as long as you're listening to your soul and things feel good for you, at the end of the day, sometimes that's all that really matters.
I totally agree. And I think I learned that lesson very early on when I saw my mum with Alzheimer's, who had saved for her retirement, and she got no benefit from it. And I made a decision on that 9-mile journey that if there was something I wanted to do in life, I was going to do it. I wasn't going to wait until I retired or until there was a right time, or, it's like having kids. There's never a right time to have kids. There's always, and we just have to kind of seize the day, take the moment, and like you say, listen to your soul, because nothing is wrong. You have all the answers. You know what is the right step for you and what's next. You really, really do know that. We we think we don't know. We use that, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, I feel stuck. And actually we do know. We just have to take a little bit of dedicated time to go within, get some help, explore, be open, and put it out there. So yeah, living life. I think that's a great way to sum it up.
Absolutely. Oh, I love this. That is so fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. Well, in that spirit of living life and, and of receiving support, if there's anything that can help along the way. If there are people watching and listening, which I'm sure there are, who would like to find out more about you, Ali, and like to connect with you further, how can they do that?
Okay, so if anybody's kind of resonating with what I'm saying and is at that place of just needing some support, not necessarily knowing what's next, but just having that inner guidance, inner voice kind of going, something needs to change, something needs to shift, I need to have a deeper relationship with myself, I want to feel more empowered, particularly to do with the voice. If your inner voice is not loud and clear to you, then, and what I'm saying resonates with you, then let's connect. Drop me a line. I'm happy to have a chat. I work one-on-one, I do group stuff, and I run a free monthly red tent online, which is a very kind of safe, sacred space for women to explore aspects of who they are, just to be together in like a shared sisterhood, to take some time for yourself. So I do that monthly online, but I have lots of different courses, and my work is primarily one-on-one as well. So I do coaching work, and I use flower essences and homeopathy and connecting with the cycle. So I'm really happy to talk to people, and I invite you to drop me a line, check out my website, and yeah, let's have a chat.
Fantastic, fantastic. Oh, well, thank you so much again, Ali. As ever, it is an honor and so much fun to speak with you. I always feel like there's so much more we could talk about. But this has been amazing. So thank you again so much. And, everyone watching and listening, thank you as well. And we hope that this has been an inspiration for you. If you have any questions, if there's anything else you'd like to know, well, I'm going to make sure that you have Ali's website as well. So all of those links will be there. And thank you also. Thank you again, Ali. What a gift.
Lovely to connect.
Absolutely. All the best. Take care. Bye for now.
I'll live for the good days, I'll dream of the great nights, I'll live for the ones I lost. Slide us up, we gonna meet in the afterlife. It's all sacrifice, I got the appetite to be a better man, let's unite. My story like a motion picture, bittersweet like shots of liquor. Let me take the pain, my skin is thicker, we one blood, I'm not pulling triggers. It's all love, and yo, here's the kicker, we working hard.